particularly I want to thank you for the great job you made. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Secretary General,
Merci beaucoup.
thank you so much for coming to Paris just before the NATO summit, which is going to take place in less than 3 weeks' time in Washington. And I would just like to say how delighted I was to receive you here in Paris, along with your teams, so that we could prepare for the summit and also prepare for all the issues that concern our alliance. This summit is going to be a very special one for you because it's going to be your last one after almost 10 years at the head of our alliance. 10 years that have been marked by major change, by war coming back to European soil, and also by the very crucial role that you have played for NATO. You have made NATO actually stand up to all the challenges, kept the unity between all the allies, and also committing yourself personally in the last few years, despite the fact that there were other proposals that came up. So I would like to say personally and institutionally, this was a great gift, all of us, and I'd like to thank you for doing this for the alliance and us. 75 years ago, NATO was set up to guarantee our shared safety after a massive crisis. We are 32 today, starting from 12, particularly Finland, who has just joined, and Sweden, which joined in March. As you know, we are at a strategic turning point, and that is at a point when war is coming back to Europe after the war of aggression that was launched by Russia, and NATO is playing a very vital role through collective deterrence, grouping together all the allies, and also thanks to the support that we are giving jointly to the interoperability that exists between all our equipment. We will obviously talk about this again in Washington. We have talked about it in the last few months several times. Our support to Ukraine continues to remain strong and will continue to be constant, and we will do our utmost to make sure that we can respond to Ukraine's immediate needs and give an unequivocal position supporting Ukraine over time in Romania, in the Baltic countries, and in other parts as well. France is continuing to stand constant and strong, and we shall continue. I recently had discussions with President Zelensky in Paris on the way in which we will continue our action, and I talked about this with you. Our agenda to reinforce support to Ukraine following the conference that took place on the 26th of February here in Paris has moved forward in many different areas. We've talked about that as well today. I'd also like to thank you, Mr. Secretary General, for having taken such strong steps to develop robust ideas to bring Ukraine into the North Atlantic family. And obviously, we will talk about this as well in the way in which the EU can follow suit. We have to send a strong message in Washington on the way in which we are integrating Ukraine into North Atlantic Alliance activities. It has its role to play, a full-fledged role, and we know that it is an existential issue that we have to deal with. Then dealing with the burden sharing, that is the way in which we will actually share the full burden of our security, is another issue that we will be discussing in Washington. Of course, it is unity that is important, but also the balance between our respective capacities to invest in defense on both sides of the Atlantic. And I think that all of us are aware of this, and the importance of reinforcing our national defense capacities are indispensable. More than 20 allies, including France, have said that they will get to 2% of GDP in their expenditure. And this is, of course, something which is an important figure. By the end of the present exercise, financial exercise, we would have doubled our investments in our armed forces. This is how we will continue to reinforce our safety with a long-term vision in view. And Europeans should be able to cover their responsibility to be dependent and capable of supporting themselves. And that is the idea of a European force which would actually be more independent and capable of defending itself and defending the alliance. The EU, obviously, with its legal and financial tools, has an important role to play in this. It would be a tool for NATO and will reinforce the cooperation between NATO and the other countries of the EU. Also, the alliance has adapted to its strategic environment. There have been defense plans that have been drawn up at the last summit and our own positions. And from all of this point of view, the Washington summit will show once again our unity and our commitment. And I know you very strongly hold this in your heart. Thank you, Jens, for being here in Paris. Thank you for our discussions. And thank you particularly for this wonderful decade of work that you have contributed to our alliance.
President Macron, Cher Emmanuel, thank you for your warm welcome and your kind words, and thank you also for an excellent meeting this afternoon. And let me also thank you for your strong personal commitment to the Transatlantic Alliance and to NATO. It has really been a great privilege to work so closely with you over all these years. It is always a pleasure to be in Paris and to meet with you. In just 2 weeks' time, NATO leaders will meet for an historic 75th anniversary summit in Washington. And as always, France will play an important role. Since NATO's founding, France has made vital contributions to our shared security and our collective defence. Today, France leads our multinational battle group in Romania and have deployed forces in Estonia. A French air defence system helps to protect our borders in the Black Sea region. French jets regularly patrol in the Baltic skies, and French naval ships keep our sea lanes open and safe. France's nuclear forces also contribute to our overall security, the security of the whole alliance. So thank you so much for France's leadership in NATO. At the summit in Washington, more support to Ukraine will be our most urgent task. Since Russia's full-scale invasion, allies have provided unprecedented support, but recent gaps and delays have led to real consequences on the battlefield. We must give Ukraine the predictability and accountability it needs to defend itself. So I expect that allies, when we meet at the summit, will agree for NATO to lead the coordination and provision of security assistance and training for Ukraine. And I have also proposed a long-term financial pledge for Ukraine. Our support is not about making NATO a party to the conflict. It is about ensuring that Ukraine can uphold its right of self-defence, a fundamental right which is enshrined in the UN Charter. At the summit, we will also address NATO's deterrence and defence, including investment. And as you mentioned, President, I strongly welcome that this year a record of 23 allies, including France, will invest at least 2% of GDP on defence. We will also address other important issues at the summit, including work with the European Union and our Indo-Pacific partners, and the decisions we will take in Washington will strengthen our alliance for the future. So, President Macron, thank you again for hosting me today. I look forward to our summit in Washington. Let me also wish you all the best for a successful Olympic Games. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All the best. And stay in touch and see you. Thank you.